Hello and welcome. So today we've got another race at Road America. The reason I'm at Road America again is because I'm going to show you a difference in the race settings and how it can improve that turn 8 problem that we saw in the previous race. But we'll get to that in just a second. So the race is going to be an exact duplicate of the race you saw in the last video. It's going to be an hour long on the 15th of June 2024, starting at 6 o'clock in the evening with real time, real weather, rolling starts, no mandatory pit stops, default progressing circuit. Everything there is exactly the same as it was. Our opponents will be another field of GT4s, starting from 12th. I'm not qualifying, I'm just going to literally hard code it to 12th place starting slot. We've got a full grid, 117 skill level, a 0.8 wet skill scaler, but we're not going to need it because it's the same weather as the last race and we didn't need it in the last race. Medium aggression, standard AI mistakes. This is the key one. So in the last race, we had it at ×2. This is going to be standard. In my test races, I've had it at standard and I haven't seen a single incident in turn 8. So I'm going to run it. This is why I want to do this race at the same circuit, so you can see how this has made a difference. Starting from 12th. The other difference today is we're going to be in the Audi R8 GT4. And the reason we're in the Audi is because I hated it when I tried it in the car shootout. So I wanted to see if I could make it suit me and work for me. And I've spent all week working on it. And I've now finally got myself in a place with the setup where I feel like I understand the car well enough to tailor the setup. And I'm now seeing results that match my theories. So this is the race you're going to see with this car. And at the end of the video, at the very end, you're going to hear me go through the setup directions I've gone, why I've gone through it, and what my conclusions are with it. So if you're interested in that, stick around until the end and you'll see that. If you're not interested in that, the race is coming up right now. So without further ado, let's get trackside and let's go racing. Pretty good start. The rolling starts do seem to work very well. See if we can get to the inside. I thought the BMW was going to keep coming over then. That's been a very smooth first couple of corners for us, that. That was a bit half-hearted of me, that, wasn't it? Probably should have been a bit more committed there. Should have this now. So there's a key difference between this race and the last race here, and this is the main reason for doing this race, is the 1 by error multiplier for the AI. So the previous race here, they were on 2 times mistakes, and this is on 1 times mistakes. And in previous races I've done since the last race, 1 times mistakes, I've not seen a single incident at turn 8. Not one. So that was the main reason I wanted to do it. fact we can get a direct comparison with the Audi is even better. So I spent a lot of time with the Audi trying to get it sorted. Pretty much there, pretty happy with it now, but we'll go through the details later. It's quite tempting, but we're not quite far enough up. I could have made the move, but I'd have been side by side with them through here. Not really a place I want to be. Been there before and doesn't really end too well. Just cost you both time. We'll sneak up the inside here though. Oh, can we get the Porsche as well? Oh, that would be amazing if we get the Porsche as well. Fantastic. Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, gotta be so careful through there. The Audi's not a fan of turn 8, it seems. So the Ginetta was loving it through there, one of its strongest corners. The Audi is really not comfortable through there at all. I mean, this is the best it's felt through there so far, but it's still not comfortable. It doesn't inspire you to really push it, you know. You sort of go into the corner with a little bit of trepidation, like, oh, what am I going to have to deal with this time, still, even now. Yeah, it just needs to be a little bit further up. Oh, I followed this wide line. Donut. It's a very forceful move, that one, but works well. Still gives them plenty of room for manoeuvre. So it's completely fair. Just feels a bit like you're sort of being a bit of a bully. Oh, so far so good. We've made some nice progress there. mistake there from the Merc. And if we can have a go. Just felt it worth defending that one. Turned in a bit late there. So the thing with turn 8 is that the reason it's inconsistent is because I'm inconsistent. That's the trouble. The car does the same thing every time. If I was to do the same thing every time, it would do the same thing every time. So it's on me. I've kind of, in the setup of the car, I've kind of got a built-in sort of tolerance for inconsistency. I'm going to defend this because the Ginetta is very good on the brakes. With the Ginetta here, all you got to do is park it on the apex, and then there's nothing you can do about it. Excuse me. Let's see if we can get this gap closed without spending too much resource. Where's my gear? Just overcooked that a little bit, didn't I? Gave them a bit of a scare, I reckon. And myself a little bit as well. And we need to really get out ahead of them. Nice. Very cool. Oh. It's a bit committed, a bit more committed than I'd like to be for there, with the way the car's feeling through there. Still, job done. Now, what can we do about these two McLarens? But before we worry about the two McLarens, let's worry about the Audi behind us. I think I felt just a little push there from the Audi, just the tiniest of pushes, nothing major, but yeah, it just unsettled the car a little bit there. Ooh. Didn't like that too much. Again. Whoa. That Camaro looks quite threatening. Need to be careful with those little slides. Don't want to do too much. That Camaro's very fast. Just held a slightly tighter line on the carousel there. The really long right hand corner. Didn't really work, I don't think. This Camaro's very intimidating. It's a bit strong. It's very threatening. I don't feel particularly safe around it. Very fast. Oh, come on, mate. See if we can use him to drag us up to the two McLarens. I mean, look at the gap he's pulled in just those two corners. They're so fast through there. Don't know if it's a Camaro thing, maybe it's just the strength of the car. Don't know. But then bang, here we are. But they do generally seem strong in the first two corners. All the AI cars do. But again, is it me that's just a bit weak more than them being strong? That was very nearly a very costly mistake. Got a bit of understeer creeping into the car. Front tyre wear is slightly higher than the rears, but the rears have been consistently hotter than the fronts. We'll try a slightly more rearward brake balance. Let's bring it back to 61. So we'll take a bit of pressure off the fronts. Increase the ABS a little bit as well. Because it's not even halfway through the race yet. Let's increase that to 5. Let's bring the balance back a bit more as well. Let's bring it back to 60. Yeah, they're pretty much the only tools I've got to use, so okay, that wasn't very helpful. going to move that balance forwards again. 62. Just rely on the ABS to hopefully try and take the burden away from the fronts a little bit. Not really making much inroads in these McLarens, are we? I thought the Camaro was going to drag us up there. Hasn't really happened. And what's happened to the Ginetta? Oh, he's off. How did you recover that? How on earth did you recover that? On the brakes? On the grass? No way. No. What? Ball bags. Really didn't need that. But you can certainly see that the one by mistakes multiplier is producing a much nicer race. It's much closer. We haven't dropped that Audi yet either. Behind us. That's still there. Too quick in. I actually think our front tyre wear is going to have us over in this race. I mean, temperature wise, it looks pretty much spot on the tyres, but wear rate is definitely up on the front. I'd say we've got about 30% more wear on the front. That's only going to get worse as the race goes on. But at no point have the front tyres really been consistently hotter than the rears. So I find that a bit odd, a bit weird. Braked a bit early there. And turned in too early as well. One wide again. Let's leave it in third. Get a bit more engine braking. Pushing too hard, Andrew. Overreaching. Oh, what are you doing? It's funny, isn't it? In any given race, there's always a period of a few laps where you just, for some reason they just can't seem to string a lap together. I think I might have just found my laps. I'm actually more concerned about even maintaining 4th place at the moment. I have my concerns. Yeah, unless the car comes back my way. Not quite there, really. And it again. 3 laps in a row. Not bad. That was nice. So I mean, it's like if I get it right, it's fine. It's just down to me. In a very lonely race. And the engine points, damage points are racking up, aren't they? Am I on the red too often? Maybe? Don't know. Maybe. Shame that Camaro's caught up with the McLarens now. We should have been up there with it really if I hadn't have screwed up. Opportunity ahead. Ah, that's the guy that was in 4th, isn't it? He was up the front at the start of the race, wasn't he? What's happened to him? I'm in no position to do that. I don't have the confidence to stick it up the inside of someone in turn 8. Yeah, if I can't make the move stick by the time I've exited the carousel, it's not on. There's a lot of dirt on the circuit there. Need to hold a tighter line through there next time. That's lost us a lot of time. Arrgh, so annoying. It's still a driver error, that's what's annoying about it. I'm annoyed at myself, not at the game. It's me I'm annoyed at. Because you can see it, it's visual. There's only one person to blame. Just time you can't afford to give away. Idiot. Come on, Andrew. Sort your life out. Don't have the same bite I did have. Not quite. But then these guys are, you know, a little bit quicker, but not by a lot. They're suffering as well. Could they be suffering a bit more? I wish they were. Off there. Yeah. But I can see the gap between me and them. That's all within... That can all be accounted for by my own mistakes. I think we can say cheerio to the Camaro now anyway. Bit of car left on the circuit there. So mistakes are clearly still happening on that turn 8. Looking at the bits of vehicle on the side of the road. but nothing like to the same degree as we saw before. Certainly not half as often. Times 2 mistakes is definitely producing more than times 2 of the errors. Oh, that was not lucky, but just very, very loose. Not helpful. Let's call it suboptimal. I mean, if they keep racing like this, might bring us back into play again. And there's a lapped car ahead as well. Just wish we were 2 seconds up the road. That's all it would need, just 2 seconds. We'd then be the beneficiary of a tow, and it would just string us along nicely. And then we'd be in a position where we could profit from situations like they're in now. Well, that didn't slow them down at all, did it? Oh, not again. Bloody hell. Jesus. That's crazy. No yellow flags. It's off there. I nearly didn't get that back then. That was very nearly a very embarrassing spin. I'm still pushing on now. I mean, it's not like I've backed off. I'm still quite mindful of the fact that with the guys behind us, not actually not that far behind. No yellow flags, even though we've been there for over a lap now. It's just not quite right, is it, that? That's just not right. Well, credit where it's due. I mean, we just have not had their pace. They've just been quicker. That's all there is to it. Is the Porsche still there? No. And even with that near miss, I haven't lost 7 seconds, but I probably have lost 7 seconds with little tiny mistakes here and there. But I couldn't have done anything with it. and I think 4th is a fair reflection of where we are. I think it's also a fair reflection of what we deserve as well. I mean, I use the word we, always have done actually in these videos, because I like to think we're sort of on it together. Well, that was pretty good. I'm not unhappy with that. The car balance went a bit towards understeer, but it was still, it just lost overall grip really. It just lost, yeah, maybe just a fraction more on the front than the rear. And if you look at the tyre wear indicator above the mirror there, you got the fronts are what, 5% more? About 5% more wear. So I could make a few changes, or a couple of minor changes to the setup, just to help equalise that a little bit, and I think that would have been about all we could do. And after that, we are where we are. That's the ceiling of my driving. And they were just a little bit quicker, weren't they? That was all there was to it. They just had that little bit extra that I didn't have, and they didn't make mistakes, and I did. So yeah, credit where it's due. I'll take it away from them. Right, let's have a look at the race time, shall we? Let's skip that cool down lap. Right, so we had, so the McLaren won it, excuse me. So the McLaren won it, ahead of the Camaro, then the other McLaren, and then us. And we were 1 minute and 53 seconds. It'll be interesting to see, in the summary, I'll compare that race time to the race time with the Ginetta, and we'll see how that compares. That'll be an interesting comparison. But yeah, right, so let's get into the summary, and we'll unpack it there, shall we? So, just a quick apology. The replay recording didn't include any of the AI cars for some reason. I'm not sure why. The replay was solely just me driving around on my own. So what we're looking at here is a previous race, a test race, which is why it might not reflect exactly what you've just seen. So, race time wise, I had a quick look. The Ginetta race was 1 hour, 1 minute and 7 seconds it took me to complete the race. Now that included maybe 5-6 seconds worth of damage, I would say, but other than that it was a pretty clean race with the Ginetta. This race was a clean race throughout, and this took 1 hour and 53 seconds. So it's a good, you know, if you take into account the damage that we incurred with the Ginetta and took that off, we're about 9 seconds, let's say 10 seconds, let's just round it up, we're about 10 seconds faster over the hour, which it's not to be sniffed at. That's a fairly big chunk of time. Not only that, it's in a car that I don't particularly enjoy. It's a lot better than it was, don't get me wrong. It can be made to be fast, it can be made to be consistent. It's just not a car I particularly enjoy driving. But I'll get into the detail of the setup changes I've made and why in just a moment. We'll get into the weeds of it in just a moment. So I thought that the one by mistakes for the AI worked really, really well. it pretty much stopped the incidents in turn 8, which is great. Clearly, the AI is right on the edge of control on one by errors through turn 8, and as soon as you put in ×2, they just can't seem to cope with it. That's how it seems, at least. So, I mean, that might be oversimplifying it by quite some stretch. If you're, like a racer dev, you might you might be scoffing now, but from a user's perspective, that's how it appears to me anyway. That when they're on the edge of ability on one by, if you then stretch it to 2 by, then you're at risk of having big mistakes. And I think, to be fair, this circuit seems to be a bit of an outlier in that respect, in that turn 8 specifically is an outlier, and it really puts them in that situation. So it's the first time I've felt the need to go to knock it back. So yeah, it seems to be the solution for Road America anyway. So if you're going to Road America, one by mistakes. Otherwise, there's a good chance you're going to end up with turn 8 shenanigans going on. The AI raced really, really nicely. The only car that gave me any real concern was the Camaro that comes storming up behind me. But its pace advantage was far greater than I could cope with. It was greater than a stern defence was going to hold back, and it was only going to end in an accident, which is why I let it go. Because even in the real world, on a real circuit, if you see a situation like that where you've got a far faster car coming up, then the lead car resists it and defends heavily, it nearly always ends in tears for somebody. So I thought better just to let them go, and I'm kind of glad I did, because it made the race more consistent. I don't think it made it particularly great to watch from your point of view, but it did. It sort of made for a better comparison. The car was not damaged. It gave me a better idea on tyre wear, and I was able to learn a lot more about the car. The more worrying thing for me was the lack of yellow flags for the Porsche after turn 1. That was a bit of a worry, because there was no yellow flags on the lap that it happened, and they were still there a lap later, and there was still no yellow flags, and the car was there in a dangerous position. So that's a bit of a concern. I will raise that on the Razor forum and link them to this video so they can see it for themselves. Right, so as far as the race goes though, that's pretty much it. I will now get into the setup detail of the car, what I've changed versus the default setup, why I've changed it, and we'll get into the weeds of it. So we'll see you in just a second with that. Now, for those that have been following this GT4 process I've been going through, you'll know that in the car selection video, I tried the Audi and very, very quickly got out of it as quick as I could, because I didn't like it at all. It had this horrible snap oversteer. It started off with understeer when the tyres were cold. It gradually got nicely balanced as the tyres were warming up, and then once they were warm, it just went to this horrible snap oversteer when you were at the apex of the corner and trying to get on the throttle. The rear was getting loose, and it just got worse and worse, and it just got to the point where I didn't know what to do with it. And I hadn't had enough time in a GT4 car to really know how to go about tuning it out, or whether I could do it. So I discounted the car and then ended up settling on the G55 Ginetta. But I wasn't particularly happy with that, and then the Ginetta got sorted and was really nice very, very quickly, and it kind of like, well, I don't really know where to go from here. So I thought, well, let's go back and revisit the Audi. Let's revisit the car I disliked the most. So I thought, well, yeah, okay, let's do that. And then the Road America race happened with the turn 8 shenanigans, and I thought, well, it'd be nice to show that as a ×1 mistakes without all of the problems. And I thought, well, okay, let's use the Audi for that then. So I've done a load of work to the setup of the car. I've gone around the houses, I've done loads of trial and error. But the trouble is that it's difficult to show in a video the changes that have been made, because you need to run about 7-8 laps to really get a feel for the warm-up phase of the tyres. And if I showed that, then you're going to be there for like 10 hours before, and it's just going to be tedious. So I thought best just to run the race with the setup I've settled on, and then run through the differences with you. So on the screen is the new setup, and then I'm going to run through what was the default setup prior to that. So the front tyre pressures have been reduced essentially. So the front has gone from 1.55 bar down to 1.46 bar, and the rear has gone down from 1.50 bar to 1.48 bar. Now this is just to get the tyres in the right temperature windows, the inside, middle, outside temperatures, just to make sure that they are the right differences apart. So you want the middle one to be the difference between the inside and the outside, basically. Because if you have it, if the middle temperature is more than the difference, it means that basically the tyre has ballooned and it's running in the middle. And if it's less than the difference between the inside and outside temperatures, then it means that it's underinflated and it's got a dip in the middle and it's running on the outer edges of the tyre. So you want the pressure just to basically make it so that the tyre contact patch is flat, basically. And that's all that is, and you do that to the conditions of the circuit. Now, normally you would also have them so that they're not symmetrical, because it's very rare for a track to be needing symmetrical tyre pressures. But in the interest of, simplicity and symmetry, I've left them as a proper symmetrical setup. The brake pressure was from their standard 90%. I've moved it up to 100. That's a personal preference thing, really. When it comes to ABS cars, even more so, I prefer to have 100% braking power. The brake bias went from 56% on the front to 62% on the front, and that was all in a bid to try and help reduce the amount of work the rear tyres were having to do. And I'll get to that in just a moment. We'll go through the suspension and the diff section, and then we'll get to the logic behind why I've done what I've done. But the brake bias was shifted artificially too far forwards, but we'll get to exactly why in a minute. The rear brake duct opening was reduced from 50 down to 40. The front duct stayed at 50%, and that was just to try and get the brake temperatures so that at their coolest they were just dipping around the bottom of the green section, so that I've got the full range available where they're in a good temperature, so that when they reach their peaks they're not massively high. So just the rear duct was reduced a little bit, just because the rear brakes were getting a little bit too cool. They were just going a little bit too low in their temperatures at that coolest point. The rear downforce went from 3 down to 2. And the reason I was able to reduce the rear downforce, I will get to when we get to the suspension section. So let's head there now. So in the suspension side of things, the caster angle stayed the same at 6.5 degrees. The front camber was dropped from -3 to -2.5, and that was just to get the inside and outside temperatures of the front tyres about 5-6 degrees hotter on the inside edge. I found that 3 degrees camber was just making them too big a difference, so I just dropped that a little bit. The ride height was raised 5mm from 95mm to 100mm, and I'll get to the reasons why when I talk about the brake balance in a little while. The spring rate was left at 2. It's 2 of 3. There's only three springs available, and it was at 2. The bump stop was increased to 20 millimeters, but that goes hand in hand with the increase in ride height as well. But the bump stop has increased at a higher proportion compared to the ride height. So I have essentially increased the front bump stop. And again, we'll get into that in just a moment. The damping, so the bump damping on the front was dropped from 12 to 11. It's a very, very small change, but it has changed. The front rebound went from 14 down to 11. Just seemed to be happy there. Yeah, it just seemed to make the car settle really nicely. And that goes hand in hand with the rear bump and rebound settings, which I'll get to in just a moment. The rear camber went from minus 2.9 degrees to minus 2.3 degrees. I actually went a little bit less camber, so I dropped it closer to 2 degrees more than normally. You'd want about a 5-degree difference on the rear tyres, according to Razor. I opted to go for a 3 degrees-ish difference. So I dropped the camber just a little bit more than I would otherwise have done. If you wanted a 5-degree difference, you'd probably go to about 2.5. But 2.9 either way, 2.9 was too much, I found. The rear ride height was dropped a little bit from 109 to 107, which is as low as it can go. And again, we'll get to that shortly. The spring rate was dropped from 2 to 1, and there's only 3 rates again for the rear spring. The bump stop at the back was dropped from 15 down to 10. Just to try and, well, so I've reduced the ride height, so you'd want to reduce the bump stops anyway, but the bump stop has reduced at a higher proportional rate than the ride height has. Again, all part of the same story we'll get to in a moment. The rebound and bump damping has gone from 12 for each on the default setup down to 10 for each on my setup. All part of just trying to balance the car out in the corners, and that actually, they may benefit from going to 11 each. Steering lock has gone from 20 degrees down to 16. I just felt like it was too reactive with 20, and I wanted to have a bit more feeling, especially when I was trying to figure out just what was going on with the car, because it's taken a lot of work to try and figure this car out. The toe angle has reduced a little bit, so the wheels are slightly more straight ahead. So a negative toe angle means that on the front means that they're pointing, if this is the underside of the car, it means that they're pointing outwards towards the front of the car. So they're now pointing slightly more straight ahead. The anti-roll bar stayed at 2, and again that's 2 of 3. You got 3 available, and it's in the middle. The rear toe angle went from 0.2 degrees toe in, which means that they're pointing inwards towards the front of the car, and they're now pointing straight ahead. There's no toe. There is no toe at all. They are literally pointing dead ahead now. And again, we'll get into the reasons why very, very, very shortly now. And the anti-roll bar stayed at 1, which is where the default setup is as well. Right, let's get into the electronics and diff now. So in the drivetrain section, the fuel level had to go up massively. So default's 25 litres, had to get 96 in there to finish the hour race. It uses a lot more fuel than the Ginetta does, a lot more fuel. The Ginetta, we finished the race on 78 litres, I think. So it's nearly an extra 20 litres of fuel used on this car. It's much, much more thirsty. The fuel map stayed at 1, so it was maxed out on the fuel map. Radiator opening was reduced from 80% down to 65%. The engine braking went, so the engine braking was reduced from 2 to 7. So I'll just explain that one. So The engine braking value is, I don't really know how you would word it, but basically the bigger the number, the less the electronics brakes the engine for you when you're in a coast state on the throttle. So it's yeah, it's a bizarre way of working it, but I'm sure that there's a logic behind it. But it's something that if you're fresh to it, you would assume engine braking. I don't want engine braking. I'm going to put that down to 0 or down to 1. Well, it's the worst thing you can do because it's the maximum amount of engine braking that it allows. So the bigger the number, the less the engine is going to brake. So, and the more engine braking you have, effectively you're moving the brake balance rearwards, essentially, when you're on a coast sort of phase of the throttle. So just something to bear in mind. It goes up to 10 on the Audi at least. I found 10 was just a little bit too free running. So I went with 7, and it was a nice little sort of butter zone there. But 2 from the default setup is really quite aggressive, I would say. So yeah, it's one of those ones where it's very depends on your driving style. It and it really does depend on your driving style. So some people would want the extra engine braking, other people would loathe it. So try it and see how you like it, and just experiment. That's all part of the fun. Now the traction control went from 6 down to 3, and the ABS went from 8 down to 3. Normally I would run it even less than that, but the default setup, you will find in all cases, the default setup, it's got a difficult job, the default setup. I've got a lot of sympathy. No, sympathy is not the right word. I've got a lot of respect for whoever it is that's creating these default setups, because they have to cater for so many different scenarios. They've got to cater for dry, they've got to cater for wet, they've got to cater for hot, for cold. There's everything, and it's not just even track conditions. They've got to cater for different control styles. Some people are playing it with a controller, some people are playing it with a steering wheel. I'm not actually sure, but it might even be possible to play with it to play it with a keyboard as well. So there's a lot of compromise in the default setups, and they'll get you round, and you'll be happy enough. But they will never be the fastest they can possibly be. You know, they'll be the master of none. So the reason I'm going into that detail is because the traction control and the anti-lock brakes, for example, with a controller player, they don't have the same you know, the same feeling on the brakes that I would have, say, with my pedals. And my steering wheel, the force feedback isn't the same. It's not as detailed. So they 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 have to put the anti-lock brakes at a higher level to cater for that. They have to put the traction control up to cater for that, and also for the conditions as well. They've got to cater for really nasty conditions. So you'll find the electronics certainly are always going to be on the safe side. So I've got traction control and anti-lock brakes at 3 and 3, and even that is very, very safe. And I'll explain again why that all comes into play. There's a lot of compromise in my setup as well, and I'll get to why in just a moment. The last detail is the preload. I dropped from 50 down to 45. It's such a minor change. And the reason it's at 45 and not 50 is simply because I went around the houses with setups, and I just ended up putting it at 45 at the end of my process. It could have so easily been 50, and I probably wouldn't even. If I went from 45 to 50, would I notice a difference? Probably not. And the last thing I changed was the clutches went from 6 on the default setup to 4, so it's a slightly less aggressive clutch setup for when I'm getting onto the throttle. Now, let's get into why those changes are what they are. After all the work I've done, I have come to the conclusion that it is highly likely that the Audi's weight distribution is too far rearwards. I think the rear axle is a bit too heavy. And I would love to be able to, because on some cars you can change. If I come into tyres, brakes and chassis, so the longitudinal weight bias, so if that's active, that allows you to say, when the car is at a standstill, how much of the car's weight is on the front axle and how much of the car's weight is on the rear axle. And in the case of the Audi, I think it's about 43.5% on the front. And I would like to make that 45% on the front, maybe 46. It doesn't need a huge amount of that, I think, but basically the rear tyres are being asked to do too much from what I can feel, and it makes the car unstable and not very nice to drive. And so what I've done is, everything on the setup is really about trying to reduce the amount of burden those rear tyres have to cope with. So the front brake bias is a bit higher than it would normally be, to help take some pressure off the work the rear tyres have to do under the brakes. The rear downforce is down, yes, but that's because the front ride height has been increased and the rear ride height has been reduced. And that just helped to flatten the rake of the car out. It helped keep the weight distribution, see, it sounds a bit backwards, but it helped keep the weight on the rear of the car. Rather than it getting thrown forwards, it helped keep it stable on the car. Took away a little bit of front end grip from aero, and all of that stuff. It just helps to balance the car out a little bit. It's counterintuitive, but it's what worked. The bump stop on the front was increased so that they came into play just a little bit sooner. Now the bump stops, if you imagine the suspension moving up and down, now the bump stop will basically prevent the wheel from moving upwards too far in, and so it's sort of like a hard rubber, but not super hard. It's still got some give in it. It's basically a point in the suspension travel where the spring rate will increase massively, but it will prevent the wheel from being able to travel too far into the wheel arch, if you like. And so you can tune at what point they engage in the travel of the suspension. So the bigger the number, the earlier in the ride height it will engage. So if you've got a ride height of 100 millimeters and a bump stop of 20, it might engage when the car rolls or pitches down and the ride height, say, at 60 millimeters, say. But you could reduce that bump stop down to 10 millimeters and it would then engage when the ride height's down to 30 millimeters, for example. So I've increased the bump stop so that they engage just a little bit sooner. And that seemed to help stabilize the front of the car. It's not ideal. It's not something I want to rely on. I only want to really have them engaged under an extreme bump condition. Say, like I've hit a curb, and I don't want the wheel to just go straight up into the wheel arch. But they're being used a little bit to try and basically keep control of the front of the car a bit better and help keep weight rearwards as well. And that worked better than having the harder spring rate on the car. The rear ride height was dropped accordingly, but then because the car was flatter, it didn't need such a large amount of rear wing on it for the high speed, so I was able to reduce that just a little bit. Now where were we? So and also the preload. So when I first did the setup, I tried to preload really, really high. It was basically try and stabilize this car by any means. And I went really, really high, and it was stable, but it made the rear tire wear really, really high, and the tyre temps got really hot at the back of the car. So I then started to piece together this weight distribution theory, and then started working towards that. And then it ended up basically being, rather than stabilizing the car from the back of the car, I was stabilizing the car from the front of the car. So the preload ended up dropping right back down again, and then the clutches were reduced to help, again, just help try and keep control of those rear tyre temperatures. So ideally I would have them a little bit higher, the clutches, so I could get a bit more drive out of the corner, and then I could also drive the car on the throttle a little bit more. But then the rear tyres get cooked and they're not happy, and then you end up with a horrible race car at the end of the stint. So that was dropped down to 4. The anti-lock brakes was increased because the artificially high front brake bias. I didn't want to be locking front wheels, and even in the race you saw me increase the ABS a little bit, and that was to help try and reduce the amount of locking I was still getting, to try and help the front tyres out in the end, as it turns out, because I think I've gone a little bit too far with the setup. Traction control was at 3 again, just to help try and keep the rear temps under control. And that's kind of where we are, really. It was all based on this theory that the rear of the car is a bit too heavy on its rear axle. So yeah, it seems to have worked, but I think I might have gone just a touch too far with it now. So if I was to run this race again now, I would likely simply reduce the anti-roll bar down on the front from 2 to 1. And that would probably be about it. The only other thing I might do, I might drop the bump stop down from 20 to say 18 or 19 as well, but I would only do one thing at a time, and I would probably start off with the anti-roll bar, and that will just help to give the front tyres a slightly easier weight transfer from inside to outside. It's not such an aggressive transfer of weight, so therefore it helps the front wheel out. It helps load the front outside wheel in a slightly more user-friendly way, rather than, it's sort of like you being chucked a bag of cement versus you being handed a bag of cement. Think of it like that, and that's kind of what the anti-roll bar is. Softening it off is going to do. It's just going to help that outside wheel. It will still get the same amount of weight, but it will just help it. It will just help make it easier for it to cope with. So then that helps reduce the amount of sliding on the outside front wheel, which then means that it's not heating up as much, because sliding over the surface is the killer. That's what gets you more than anything else. So it just helps you get that. But obviously it was at 2 because we wanted to try and balance the car out. So yeah, that's where we are. So just one last little flip through then. So tyres, brakes and chassis looks like that now. The suspension looks like that now, and the drivetrain looks like that now. And this seems to be a really nice user-friendly setup for this car, verified by a third party, that they would choose this 10 times out of 10 over the default setup. So I will take that. Yeah, right. That's been a very long summary, but I think the setup bit's worth it, because I can't show you in video form. That's a really annoying thing, because to show you the process in video form would have just been hours and hours and hours, and it was also quite a haphazard process that I went through. It wasn't my usual logical process, because I had to try and understand what was going on with the car and why it was doing what it was doing. And to understand that, I had to try loads of different things to either rule out or confirm theories. And it took a very long time, which is why you haven't seen a video from me in a little while, because I've been working on this damn car. But anyway, I'm quite happy to leave that there now with this car. I'm not going to spend any more time with it. That setup there is pretty damn good, pretty consistent, and as you can see, even for an hour-long race, it was pretty good. So it's certainly a good place for anyone who's interested in taking it on to take it further if they wanted to. Right, I'm going to stop rambling now. Thank you very, very much for watching. Thank you very much for supporting. And until the next time, we'll see you later.